In this video, I'm going to be philosophizing on helpingness, concerned with the overarching subcomponent personality characteristics as it pertains to distinctions in obligation compared to courtesy, compared to politeness. Obligation most concerns distinctions within self-tasking and or an individual engaging certain goals within cooperations. One self-navigates to accomplish benefits mutualizing within the cooperation, current to future-oriented benefits unique to the benefactors, whom are the cooperators. Averting, in some cases, engaging in cooperations with cooperators within avoidance goals related to more obligations unique to allowances and or certain disallowances to engage obligations more unique to work one is more likely to receive certain reciprocated benefits instead of being taken advantage of. Yet individuals whom are more sensitive within what's more sensible and or intellectual evaluations are more likely to be courteous, meaning individuals whom are courteous are most concerned with the desire to engage cooperations to satisfy certain underlying essential and or necessitated underlying psychological needs within the cooperation, meaning there are unique essential and or necessitated underlying psychological needs associated with an individual's navigation more fairly of one's self-preferences in engaging mutualizing benefits within the cooperation. One is more likely to communicate clearly within verbal and or nonverbal communications one's desire to cooperate with individuals whom one is more likely to benefit mutually from, and or communicate inequities in terms of the feelings and or desires one may feel unsatisfied within certain cooperations, communicating more courteously to calibrate one's truthful subjective experiences to the cooperations, sensitive to certain deprivations and or satisfactions within one's unique essential and or necessitated underlying psychological needs, meaning individuals whom are more courteous tend to be more sensitive of situations they may be exploited and or taken advantage of, and or may not feel the cooperation is providing meaningful benefit to them and may be meaningless and or counterproductive to their life goals. These individuals whom are more courteous are more likely to hold the self-knowledge and or self-awareness as the appropriate jobs to quit, no longer providing the appropriate benefits and or underlying psychological need satisfactions, including jobs one most desires to engage mutual benefit and or negotiate promotions in terms of feelings of dissatisfaction. One is not willing to do certain self-tasks with the initiative until one is appropriately compensated to meet the desires within the cooperation that are more appropriate to satisfy certain essential and or necessitated underlying psychological needs. Not necessarily fair, yet more calibrated to one's feelings of what constitutes meaningful cooperations within one's actual factual inputs in terms of their labor, in relation to expected outputs in terms of individuals' responses in receiving certain mutualizing benefits, including compliments, not always income, yet income tends to be the most meaningful in terms of workplace desire to engage more meaningful work, not less, and or the expected meaningful work, yet more, to avoid exploitation and or inequities within one's labor, disproportionate to what others may be conducting, be it an individual is conducting the most meaningful work within the 1 to 3% of the workforce within that job, whom are hyper-productive. Not necessarily hyperactive, yet hyper-productive, meaning they are accomplishing most meaningful self-tasks, increasing the intercategorical and or intracategorical effectivenesses and or efficiencies that have certain benefits to employers, maximizing revenue and or the reputation within the company, directly and or indirectly related to an individual's meaningful contributions, optimizing productivity, the number one predictor of what's most likely to increase economic benefit, more unique to altruistic conducts that prevent and or mitigate hazards, including physical and or psychological hazards within the workforce, concerning with near and or far long-term prevention and or solutions to problems, not uniquely solving problems within the experiential encounter with band-aid solutions, yet more meaningful long-term solutions that prevent and or mitigate meaningful similarities within the problem within the future, to allowance for more benefit and or disallowance the harms and or threats associated with the hazards, ultimately optimizing subjective well-being for individuals around one, engaging more helpfulness within one's situated personality characteristics, more unique to the workplace, compared to politeness, most associated with the cleanliness within one's communications of clean verbal and or nonverbal communications, with often elevated, meaningful optimizations of the desire to engage and or actually factually communicating cleaner subsequent to having children in marriages, in order to provide the appropriate role modeling of the desired complementary values within equitable communications to children whom are for lack of the appropriate communication, negligent in terms of engaging moral and or ethical expectations, needing more meaningful communications, prioritizing the prosociality and or altruism, avoiding antisocial counterproductive communications more likely to result in misconducts within direct perception instead of desired prosociality within direct perception, engaging more polite and or clean communications with pleases and or thank yous instead of certain cusses that may be more likely to result in individuals appropriating the wrong misconducts, adopting the antisocialities of others' criminality from the social contagions, instead of appropriating the more heroic, altruistic, verbal and or non-verbal communications within more elaborate vocabs, not unique to the analytic terms one holds self-knowledge and or self-awareness, yet the appropriate grammar in the cleanliness of one's communications to infer the correct thank yous and or pleases and or excuse me, yet I disagree with your perspective. I think it's wrong. This is my rationale. If you would excuse my subjectivity, I would politely communicate my distinct original perspective within what's more clean and or fair, not necessarily communicating what is more inappropriate, not necessarily rude, as rude is most related to courtesy and more directly and or indirectly related positive associations to intellect, meaning as an individual is higher in intellect and or courtesy, an individual is more likely to engage in more rude, moral and or ethical communications that are more likely to equitably punish and or communicate what is expected in terms of more difficult to engage communications, including verbal and or non-verbal communications, within what is more likely to benefit society. Meaning, there are certain situations individuals may engage in misconducts other individuals are not willing to confront and or engage. Ruder individuals are more likely to engage in brutal honesty, going to individuals and or communicating their dissatisfaction with certain misconducts harmful to others around them, whom are psychological and are in some cases physical hazards, whom should desist from the misconducts for the pathogens they are spreading, including, in some cases, rudeness to authorities whom are, in some cases, police officers who may be engaging in the violation of other individuals' basic rights and or freedoms appropriately, not themselves violating the law in terms of engaging those communications, yet appropriately bringing awareness to issues of police misconducts that are direct. For example, prohibiting individuals whom one has told to vacate a location to go in a specific direction instead of the other probabilistic possible directions that would solve the same issue, whom are responsible for arbitrarily preventing an individual from engaging their intrinsic basic rights and or freedoms for mobility, their mobility rights and or freedoms. It's meaningful to solve conflicts, engaging in antagonistic and or counterproductive communications instead of compromise that's more likely to result in positive outcomes and or decrease the crime rate, not increase the crime rate. Engaging in unfair communications within what is impolite yet rude in terms of upholding basic human rights and or values appropriately. Individuals whom are more courteous are more likely to benefit society in terms of certain communications within the ruder communications, uniquely with individuals whom are higher in intellect, not necessarily low in intellect, who may engage in rudeness, yet inappropriately, and themselves may be impolite and or hazards to individuals around them, increasing the physical and or psychological hazards, often engaging in crimes, instead of individuals whom are more likely to be perceived in engaging in crimes, and yet whom are more likely to be the individuals whom are advocating for basic human rights and or freedoms appropriately. Engaging more helpfulness in terms of what butters society in terms of decreasing the crime rate and or the likelihood individuals will perceive injustices and or optimize the perceptions of satisfaction and or future-oriented protection of the public, which is most threatened by individuals whom are violating individuals' basic human rights and or freedoms arbitrarily. Engaging, in some cases, in police misconducts that are the worst in terms of decreasing individuals' feelings of safety and or security in society, including more likely to result in disproportionate abuses to individuals that motivate revolutions and or crimes that may, in some cases, not be appropriately recorded in terms of the crime rates, with artificial statistics that may claim lower crime rates than are valid and or psychologically truthful in terms of the communications. In some cases, clear reporting indicates there is an increase in more serious crimes, including violent crimes and or rapes and or robberies, resultant from certain misconducts and or abuses. Yet, in some cases, misconducts may be masked to avoid the disrepute of the certain governing corpus and or police to prevent moral panics and or encourage more prosociality, yet individuals truly may be more cognizant, having experientially encountered several misconducts by often the same bad apples, whom are the troublemaking police officers that are often a small percentile of the police force, yet are not meaningless, meaning the 7 to 10% of rotten insectoids whom are the fruit flies that fly around the dispossessed, abusing them with the most over-policing on individuals whom, yes, may commit more crimes and in some cases are the serious criminals, yet are also more likely to police individuals whom need not be policed, and policing will result in increased crime rates superficially, resultant from punishing individuals whom should not be punished for engaging in petty crimes and or in some cases not even committing in crimes, resulting in miscarriages of justice, whom are more likely to hold, in this case specifically the police officers, personality disorders related to psychopathy and or narcissism, whom are more likely to advocate for arbitrary surveillance and or imprisonment of certain individuals and or advocate for more cruel and or unusual punishments and or may engage in cruel and unusual punishments of others even within their spare time, whom are the least helpful individuals, engaging counterproductiveness that is the opposite of helpingness. That's all I want to say for this video. Hope you have else one. Keep this episode.